Hi, I'm John Davidson, lead pastor at Evangel Temple. Thank you so much for tuning into the message today. I hope it's a blessing and an encouragement to you. If it is, leave us a note in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. I hope you enjoyed this message from God's Word today.
Praise the Lord. Thank you. It's always good to be in God's house, to worship Him and praise Him, to lift up our voices, to worship the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. In Psalms 59, 16 through 17, it says, "But I will sing of your strength. I will sing aloud of your steadfast love in the morning. For you have been to me a fortress and a refuge in the day of my distress. O my strength, I will sing praises to you. For you, O God, are my fortress, the God who shows me steadfast love." You know, I think for every person, for every family, there's certain dates in our life that stand out, things that we'll never forget. And May 11th of 2004, 2004, not 2024, but May 11th, 2004 is one of those days that we'll never forget. And I truly believe that it was a day that Satan was trying to destroy our family. He planned for that to be a day of pain and of grief and despair and take all of our hope away. He wanted to destroy our family unit, destroy our ministry. But we serve a mighty God. And in our day of distress, we turn to God. He is our strength. He is our refuge. And He is the one that is there for us. And on that day, we found that God was there for us. We had been serving for 8.5 years at this time in the country of Niger, a country that was 99.8% Muslim, a very difficult area to minister in. But yet we had seen God doing amazing things. We went with a 1 and a 2-year-old. Our kids were now 9.5 and 11 years old. We were loving life. We all spoke French. We were involved in ministry, church planting, evangelism, children's ministries, medical missions, planting churches. We were doing all kinds of things, seeing God work miracle after miracle, opening blind eyes, straightening out crippled legs and arms. We had seen God put families back together, give hope to people that thought there was no hope. We were having the privilege. There's nothing better than taking the gospel message to someone that has never heard the name of Jesus before, someone that has never heard that Jesus loves them, that He died on the cross to pay for their sins. And we'd had that privilege. And in the past 8.5 years, God had given us the incredible privilege of planting 5 churches. We were seeing God move and work in so many mighty ways.
And I was serving as, we'd started a Bible school with some of the other missions that were there. And so I had decided to go up to, had a new church plant in a place called Tillowberry. And so I took 2 Bible school students and their wives, and we had 3 children on board. And we were in our Land Cruiser going up to do ministry there. And most of the roads are not good. Niger, though, even if you didn't have a road, you could drive because it's 2/3 Sahara Desert and pretty flat. But I was enjoying the drive. It was one of the 2 nicely paved roads in the country, so I'm doing 60 miles an hour, and we're visiting in the car. And I realized there's this truck that's like tailgating me, and I look back, and it's a type of Toyota that the military use. And so north of the town that I was going to was a federal prison, so I just thought, oh, these are soldiers headed up there. So I actually slowed down and gave way to make sure they had plenty of room to pass me. Only when they got alongside me, I realized they weren't passing, they were matching my speed. And so I look over to see what's going on, and it's a 2-lane road, and so right there is this car, and the passenger window is down, and here's a guy in a turban, and I realize these aren't military, and he's got an AK-47 pointed at me. I don't get a chance to do anything. I don't know, maybe they'd been signaling me before and I didn't realize. I don't know. All I know is he started shooting. And he could have shot me in the head or the chest or whatever, but he shot through the door, aiming at my legs. Because at that time, Al-Qaeda, the Islamic Maghreb, they were carjacking, but they weren't doing the normal carjacking. Normally, you would have a barrier on the road and they'd steal the car, but they would shoot the car up. They would wound the driver, but then they were taking the cars to Mauritania, chopping them up, and these full-size Land Cruisers, their engine is worth more in parts than as a whole. So they didn't care about damaging the merchandise because they were after the engine. And so he starts shooting through the driver door, and the first bullet that comes through goes through my left knee and the inside of my knee, a third of my knee's on the dashboard. And I had a hole, you could put your finger through my knee, and my jeans caught fire. I remember putting the fire out. And then a second bullet came through the lower part of my leg and took out all the flesh, the bone. And I'm driving a standard vehicle, so for some of you here, you don't really know what that is, but you have a clutch and you have an extra foot feet. You got to work both feet, not just one. So in my panic, I slammed on brake and clutch. Well, this leg just received 2 bullets, so I actually probably did more damage to myself than the bullets did, because when I slammed on the clutch, I no longer have a knee, and then I split my femur vertically, and the 2 bones went like that, and now this leg's 6 inches shorter. But I got the car stopped because I was worried about my passengers, that they kept shooting. And also I'm thinking it's the middle of the afternoon. We've passed cars on the road, so if we can get out of this vehicle, give them whatever they want, we'll have help. And so I'm get out of the car, hopping on one leg and in shock, and the others are getting out. Well, this car that was matching me, when I hit the brakes, I left some nice tire tracks on that pavement because they were still there when I went back. But when I hit the brakes, they flew by, but they stopped. They had a third person in the rear of their truck with a machine gun. The guy that shot me runs back, and I've gotten out of the car at this point. He's yelling at everyone to stay in the vehicle, and then he forces me onto the laps of my passengers in the back. He commandeers the vehicle. The other vehicle follows, and we go into the desert. There's nothing but sand and lava rock. And we get about 3 miles off the road, and they pull down in this little low area, and they get us all out. I'm laying in the sand. Niger's average temperature is like 120 degrees. It was 130 degrees that day. The sand is burning my skin. I can't walk. My leg's broken. I remember handing my wallet to them covered in blood. They're not happy. They expected to get more money, but they stopped a missionary and student pastors. So there wasn't a lot of cash on board, but they took our phones, our cash and everything. And then they start discussing what to do with us, because the man that shot me is telling the others he doesn't want to leave any witnesses and he wants to finish us all off. And what saved us was the fact that we had an 8-month-old baby and like a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old in the car. And so one of the guys says, I didn't sign up to kill children. He said, I'm not shooting babies. And they have this discussion, and he's not in agreement with the commander on wiping us out. Well, then my student pastors realize, hey, we need to get in this negotiation. I mean, our lives are at stake here. So they jump in, and they tell these guys, they're like, you've made a big mistake today. The guy that you just shot, he's a Malam, which is an Islamic preacher. He's a Malam. You've shot a Malam, and we're student Malams. And if you kill all of us, you will be cursed to the 4th generation. They're my Bible school students, but it wasn't a time to talk about theology. What they were saying was like getting through to this guy that had doubts anyway. And so then it just fired up the discussion. And so then finally, the third guy, he's like, okay, we're done talking. He said, let's save our ammunition. And he said, and he pointed at me and he said, and he's dead anyway. And then they take my vehicle and their vehicle, and they leave us there. I always had a nice med pack that I would carry with me with all the emergency stuff and all that. Well, my med pack just drove off, and there was nothing there. One of the pastors took his wife's head scarf and did as best as he could to try to tie a tourniquet around my leg to slow the bleeding down. And these two, the Nigerian people are like real slender and tall, and I'm husky. And so they tried to, carry me, and I couldn't handle the pain. It was terrible. And then also not a good idea, because with all those bones broken and sharp in there, the bullet just missed my main artery, so they could have cut it trying to carry me. So I was like, you guys just leave me here. One of you stay with me. The rest of you hike back to the road and try to get help. And so they leave me there. They've got my blood all over them, and as they're leaving, I'm assessing my situation. And the thing is, you have to understand that emergency services at that time in Niger were not good. I could have been shot in the parking lot of the National Hospital and not made it. And here I am out in the middle of nowhere. And so I'm assessing my situation. I'm like, when they get to the road, these cars, no one's coming off road. They got my blood all over them. I mean, no one's going to come off road and possibly drive into an ambush. And the nearest trooper station was an hour away. And so I'm thinking, okay, these drivers, they will alert the authorities when they get there. And I'm doing these calculations in my mind, and I'm thinking, okay, best case scenario, I get help in 3 hours. I am not going to make it 3 hours. I will bleed out before then. And I have to be honest with you, I was not happy with the Lord at that moment. No, I told the Lord, I said, I've come over here with my family to this backside of the Sahara Desert where it's hot, it's hard, it's difficult. I've sacrificed for you, and I'm going to die like this out in the middle of nowhere. And I just said to the Lord, I'm like, you could have caused me to have a flat tire, engine to break down, battery not to start this morning, all kinds of ways you could have kept me off this road. And I think when we get to heaven, we're going to be surprised, all of us, that things that inconvenienced us in this life, programs changes, scheduling changes, stuff that we got upset about, actually the devil was trying to kill us every day we were on planet Earth. And we're going to get to heaven and see time and time and time again where God spared us from what the enemy had planned. We're just not aware of it. But he does permit certain trials. But you know, if you were never sick, you can never testify of a healing. If you never had a financial difficulty, you can never testify of a miracle. If you never went through anything hard, how could you testify about the faithfulness and the goodness of our God so that other people might know him? And so I'm there complaining, and then I realized it just, it hit me. It's never ended well for the people of God to try to go into the promised land murmuring. And I'm like, Jesus can answer all these questions in like 30 or 40 minutes. Do I want to go into heaven complaining or try to go into heaven complaining? And so I just had this attitude adjustment right there, and I realized I'm in a country that's 99% Muslim. Any other driver would have no hope. They would have no future. And yet, I have a hope and a future. I know where I'm going. I know whose life my hands are in. I know who I'm following. And so I just began to worship and praise the Lord that I have the privilege of knowing him, and it is a privilege to serve the Lord. And I'm thanking the Lord for serving him. This peace came over me that I cannot describe today. It was such a divine peace that I misinterpreted it. For me, I'm getting ready to go through the pearly gates. And so I'm like, whoa, I'm getting ready to leave this life. And so then when you come to a point like that, things that you thought were important in life, the stuff that we're so concerned about, really doesn't matter. What matters at that point are the relationships you have, and in particular, your relationship with God. All the other things are just stuff, tools, things we use. It doesn't matter. And so I began to pray and ask the Lord to take care of Shelly and my 9.5-year-old daughter. 9 and 11-year-old daughter. And as I'm praying for them, asking the Lord to be with them, God spoke to me like I'm speaking to you now in an audible voice there in the desert, and he just asked me a question. He said, Brent, who told you that your mission on earth is over? The question shocked me. And, God speaking to you directly like that, you should have no more doubts. You should just be filled with faith. But I'm still dealing with my circumstances, which seem impossible and are impossible. And so I said to the Lord, I'm like, Lord, I'm willing to serve more, spend more time serving you on earth, but you're going to need to do some miracles in a hurry. I'm normally a patient guy, but this is time sensitive now. And I'm asking the Lord to do a miracle. Well, I didn't know that the first miracle had already happened. I didn't even find out till later. All I know is that 5 minutes after the Lord spoke to me, I hear the sound of an engine, and we don't have state troopers there or national police. We have what we call gendarmes in the French system. So someone had made an anonymous phone call to the National Gendarmerie in the capital city, had informed them that I had been shot, was critically injured, and gave them the coordinates of where I had been dumped in the desert. And the miracle is that the anonymous phone call came 30 minutes before the attack. So a rescue cruiser with heavily armed gendarmes is already on the road when I get attacked, and so I had help within 15 minutes of being shot. And so after the Lord spoke to me, I hear the sound of an engine. I'm very surprised, because like our highway patrol does not patrol a highway. They have their posts, so I'm very surprised to see them. I didn't find out later what had happened, but I just know this is a miracle. And they pick me up, and they get the passengers that were with me, put me in the back of the truck, which was a brutal ride, to take me to this small town I'm going to. Now, I'm planning a church in this town, but I'd never, ever had a desire to go to the clinic there. And this clinic actually does have an operating room, but it's like mothballed. They don't have a doctor there normally on duty. They have like a doctor that comes through once a trimester, so you're lucky to find one. And then even the nurse there, they don't even always have an RN. So I'm like, these people, I mean, they can't help me. I'm glad to be alive, but they can't help me. My help is in the other direction in the capital city. But I'm happy to be there. They take me in there, and they put me up on this slab in the emergency room. And I asked one of the pastors, I'm like, that was with me, I said, could you go to the church, walk to the church plant? We had a landline there, and I said, go there and call my wife.
So in the West African culture, you never announce a death by phone. So you will call and you will say, you need to come. Mom is sick. You need to come. Or you'll say, Mom is sick, and we just want you to know. And then you'll send a group of people to go and inform. But you always inform a death in person. So when I get the message that Brent has been shot and that it's serious, those are the words they're using. It's very, very serious. I don't know if he's alive or not. And I keep saying, is he alive? And they say, it's serious. It's really bad. It's really bad. And the pastor was crying, it's really bad. So I don't know if he's alive. I know in this culture they cannot tell me over the phone if he has already died. I say, okay, I'm coming to you. And immediately, no, you don't come. We're coming to you. You stay where you are. It's too dangerous to be out on the road. And so I'm overwhelmed. Here I am with my kids. We had taken a break. We'd been in ministry the week before, all week, actually traveling to Tillaberi, where Brent is now. We had been doing a children's ministries training. And so we had taken the day off. We were swimming and next to the embassy there and enjoying a day off when I get this news. But you know, God, He always provides what we need at the time that we need it. There were people with me when I get this news, people to take my kids, to be with them, to get them away from all the news that was coming in, to protect them. And as I was just trying to process all this, there was this peace that came over me and like a voice speaking in my head that said, you're going to continue to work here in Niger with your family. Well, I knew the reality was that they would not allow a young 20-something woman with her 2 little girls to come and live in a predominantly Muslim area without a man in her life. So I knew if I was going to come back, I needed my husband. And that just spoke to me, God's going to save Brent's life. God is going to save Brent's life. The first phone call I made was to my parents. And I remembered I got a hold of my mom, and I told her what had happened. And immediately when I hung up from her, she called Pastor John's parents, who were pastoring my parents at that time, and they got that phone call. They were their second people to know that Brent had been shot. I had told my mom, I said, I got to call Brent's parents, pray with me. She had prayed with me before she hung up. I called Brent's parents. They were working at Global University, missionaries there. I remember talking to Brent's dad and having to tell him, I've got a phone call and Brent's been shot. And he said to me immediately, is he still alive? And without even thinking, I said, yes, he's going to be okay. And he's like, how do you know that? I said, I just know in my heart, God's going to do something. Immediately, both of our parents started calling people, prayer chains all over with the missions department, and they were sending out news. And within 30 minutes, I was getting phone calls from all around the world, people that were praying, thousands and thousands of people that were calling up on the throne of God, praying for God to do a miracle for our lives. God was with us.
And so here I am in this small town in this government clinic, and I'm on this cement slab, and this guy starts cutting off my pants, and I see all the wounds, and it felt as bad as it looked. It was rough. And I remember thinking to myself, there's no way I'm keeping this leg, but at least I'm alive, you know. But this guy that's working on me, everything that's in the door of a Toyota is in my leg. So he's pulling out foam, plastic, all this stuff. He's stopping the bleeding, and he's like working with great skill and precision. And I look up at him, and I'm like, are you a doctor? And he laughed, and he said, yes. He said, I'm a doctor. But he said, more importantly than that, I am the man that's going to save your life. And so he said, in fact, you're a very lucky man. And I said, really? How so? I'm looking at this leg. He said, you're a very lucky man, because he said, I'm not supposed to be here. And I realized this is miracle number 2 that's happening when I told God he needed to do some miracles. This man is like the only one of 2 gunshot trauma surgeons in the country. He's a military officer. He's not supposed to be there. A typo on his order sent him there to the Mali border. He's supposed to be 2,000 kilometers away on the Chadian border, and because of paperwork, he's stuck there for that week. So he said, this was the only week you could have chosen to get shot, and I saved your life. The truth of the matter was, had I been shot in the capital city, he wouldn't have been there. God placed a surgeon at the right place at the right time. And I'm realizing now, okay, these guys got to me, and now this guy's been transferred in. God's in control, and he's put things in place here. And so the surgeon's working on me, and he gets me stabilized, and then he's asking for stuff he can find in the clinic. Like he built like a brace to stabilize my leg, and he says, we have to evacuate you to to Niamey, to the capital city, where they'll have to do another operation on you. So he said, I'm getting you ready for that, and I'm wondering how they're going to get me there. So once again, I think I'm going to have to wait like 3 hours, because I've been coming and going to this town for 2 years, and the ambulance at that clinic had been up on blocks, broken down, no tires on it. You know, it was a decoration in the front of the clinic. And so I'm thinking, how are they going to get me there? And then they wheel me out, and here's a brand new ambulance that the government had bought for that clinic. And so they put me in this ambulance, and I'm like, wow, this is awesome. And but it doesn't move. So I'm laying in there, and there's nobody in the ambulance with me. And after about 15 minutes, the door opens, and it's the governor of the province telling me how sorry he is that I got shot in his province. And they're doing everything they can to get my vehicle back. Well, at this moment, I'm no longer concerned about my Land Cruiser. I'm concerned about getting to the next place, you know. But he closes the door, and then about another 10 minutes go by, the door open, and now it's the commander of the Northern Army, and he's also telling me that they're in hot pursuit of the terrorists, and they're doing everything they can to recover my vehicle. And I thank him, you know, I'm trying to be really nice and everything, and he closes the door, and I'm sitting there wondering, why is this thing not moving? The door opens again, and now it's our pastor from up there, student pastor, and he's like, how you doing, pastor? And he's getting ready to close the door. I said, don't close that door. Tell me, why is this ambulance not moving? He said, well, we didn't want to worry you. He said, we've been working on it. He says, there's no fuel in town, but he said, we've been able to find enough fuel to get you to the capital city. Things that in life on this side of the world we take for granted, but every little thing, it seems like in Africa, when you're in a crisis situation, demands a miracle. And so they take me by ambulance, and as we're coming into the city, the ambulance driver, and fortunately, I didn't lose consciousness through all of this, because as we're coming to the city, the ambulance driver turns his head to me and he says, Pastor, where am I taking you? So I was like, do you have a cell phone? He said, yes. He gives me a cell phone. And then I call Shelly. It's been like 5 hours since I've been shot. Now she knows that I actually am alive. And I asked Shelly, where is this ambulance supposed to take me?
So here I am. I've heard that Brent has been shot. God has put incredible people around me. One of them is a general's wife that has very close connections to the French clinic in town. She tells me, I'm going there. I'm going to have a doctor waiting. Everything's going to be waiting on you. Bring Pastor there as soon as he gets to town. So I've been waiting with the embassy personnel, filling out all their papers, talking to them, doing everything I need to do for hour after hour, not knowing what's going on. And then I get the call and I hear Brent's voice. And for the first time in 5 hours, I know that my husband is alive. I tell him, they're waiting on you at the French clinic. I'll meet you there. So I jump in the embassy personnel's car. We take off to the French clinic. When we get there, the ambulance had already arrived. They were taking Brent in. I didn't even have to ask where to go. I literally just followed a trail of his blood into the place where he was. He was white as a sheet. He had lost a lot of blood, but he was conscious. And as we were sitting there, they took him, they did all the x-rays and everything, and the doctor began to talk to me. He said, this is very serious. His main artery and his main nerve are within a millimeter of being hit. But we think we can help him, we can save his life, but we've got to do surgery immediately. So they move him from the clinic back to, now go to the main national hospital, a place that we never wanted to be admitted, a place we'd definitely never choose to be operated on. But here we are, it's the middle of the night at this point. We're there. Another thing about the West African situation there in a hospital, at least at this point, is if you're having surgery, the patient is required to buy everything they need. The gauze, the bandages, the antiseptic, the sutures, everything they're going to use to fix his leg, I have to go out and buy. It's after midnight. Where am I supposed to get this stuff? There's 2 clinics in the hospital or in the city that are open, 2 pharmacies. God provided what we needed. We were able to get everything we needed. I had people there that were able to help me get it. We have him set up. There's a missionary with his blood type that goes into the hospital room with him that's there ready to give a blood transfusion if needed. And that was also just an answer to prayer and God's grace, because he was able to take pictures that helped us get the evacuation plane we would need later. So he's there in the operating room, and they actually asked me if I want to come in, but I know I have to work on the evacuation. And I said, no, I'm going to go. And so I leave everything I have, all my cash, I leave with the friend. He's waiting out in the hallway next to the surgery door. I said, if my husband needs anything, the doctors need anything, you run and you get it. You use all, it doesn't matter, whatever it costs. If you need me, call me. And I went home to get documents, to get everything in order so that we could leave. He came out of surgery, they put him in ICU. ICU at the National Hospital there was nothing like our ICUs here. There were no instruments in there, no machines. He was on a bare plastic mattress with just a dirty sheet over him. There were ants and roaches crawling around. There was gauze and bloody things all on the ground. But my husband was alive. He was conscious. He was not doing very well, but he was talking to us. He was praising God. We were praying together. People were coming in and praying for him. Then they moved us back to the original French clinic. And the French doctor there, he came to me and he said, you have turned my hospital into a chapel. Because every waiting room, every hallway, every place where there was space, there were Christians in there calling out to God, praying and believing for a miracle. God was doing something mighty. It was about 48 hours later that we finally got on the plane to go to Paris. I had just been reading a book about a missionary, and this lady had to leave her 2 small children at an airport waiting for missionaries to arrive while she evacuated with her husband who had had a heart attack. I remember reading that thinking I wouldn't have left my girls. I would stay with my girls and send my husband because they're my children. I got to take care of them. But you know, like I said, God gives us the grace to do what we need to do in the moment. And when that moment came that I needed to get on that plane and leave my 2 little girls, God provided for them. There were missionaries, there were friends, there were Christians surrounding them. They stayed back. They kissed their daddy goodbye. I hugged them goodbye. They followed us to France a day later, and we got on that plane and went. As we entered on the plane, the doctors there, they told me, we're going to put your husband to sleep for this flight. So why don't you come and tell him good night, and then you'll be able to talk to him once we get to Paris. So I remember leaning over him, talking to him, telling him I loved him. We prayed together, and then they put him to sleep. They said, we've got a place back here in the plane for you. We've got some food. We've got some blankets and pillows, a place for you to lie down and rest. We've got about a 5-hour trip ahead of us. For over 48 hours since I'd gotten the news that Brent had been shot, I had not shed one tear. I had been strong. I'd been the person in charge. I'd done everything I needed to do, get in contact with every person, gotten all of our documents together, taken care of my children, answered all the questions. But at that moment, my job was done for what I needed to do. I had 5 hours, and I put that blanket over my head, and I began to just cry out to God, and I began to weep. And I cried myself to sleep. When we arrived into Paris, the ambulance was there. They put Brent in the ambulance. We took off for the hospital. My expectation was we were going straight to surgery. They put him in a room, and we were there from about 6 o'clock in the morning until around 7 p.m. They'd come in every hour. They'd check his temperature, and the surgeon would come to see me with the clipboard and with a piece of paper wanting me to sign to authorize him to amputate Brent's leg. God had already done so many miracles. I was not going to be the one that signed on the dotted line to say, yes, you can cut his leg off. I said, you haven't even taken the bandages off and looked. And the surgeon kept saying, we know, look at his body. He's got dirt, he's got sweat, he's got sand, he's got blood on him. There's no way this leg isn't infected. And I said, do you have to take the leg off? And I remember him telling me, if there's infection, we have to. He'll never be able to use it anyway. You're doing your husband a disfavor. But I said, no. I said, if you have to take it off to save his life, then you do it. But I'm not going to sign that paper. And I refused to sign the paper to cut off his leg.
One of the things we didn't find out till later was that a 4th miracle had taken place, because when I was taken to the National Hospital to be operated on at at 1 a.m. In Niamey. The President of the Republic, President Mamadou Tanja, sent his personal surgery team, medical team, to take care of me. We had no idea. It's amazing how God works. And then now here I've made it to this hospital in France, and so I don't know what's going on, and I'm a happy guy. They've got me on morphine, and I'm loving everybody, and talking to everybody, but I mean, we're there all day, and they come in every couple hours and check my temperature, and I'd see them kind of talking to each other, and then they'd call Shelly out, and then Shelly'd come in, and I'd say, "Is everything okay?" And she's like, "Oh, everything's fine." She's not telling me what she's going through, and so finally they decide they can't wait any longer. It's evening, and they decide to operate. And the American hospital there, they actually have a conveyor belt like for luggage, but for people. And they put me on this conveyor belt, and that's what takes you into the operating room. And then it has this, like how luggage offloads. Well, when you get in the conveyor belt, it offloads you onto the surgery table. It was actually pretty cool. So anyway, they send me on the belt into the OR and everything. And because we'd had medical teams, surgery teams coming from the States to Niger, and we had a partnership with the National Hospital, I had served as their interpreter for French. So I knew how their theater was set up. And so I look over and I see the instrument table, and I see the saws on the table. And I realize, oh, they're going to amputate my leg. And I remember as they were putting me under, I prayed and I said to the Lord, "Lord, if you want me to preach on one leg, I'll preach on one leg. But thank you for giving me another opportunity to serve you." And I went out. I wake up, and my leg's still there, only I've got this fixator they've put in with a handle on the top to carry it, and I'm in the hospital, and I've got a very upset French surgeon, and he's very upset with my wife, and he tells me she's done me this great disservice because my leg cannot be repaired, I'll never walk on it again, and now that they've put this fixator in, when I do need to have it amputated, I'll lose more bone than I would have. And so I have all this contraption in my leg, and he says, "So we're going to fly you home you're going to have to go to the United States because we can't repair it here, and your wife won't let us amputate, so we can't do anything else for you here. So we've put this fixator in, we're going to fly you to Houston, Texas." And he talked to me like it was punishment. Now, I'm from Texas, so flying me to Texas was not punishment for me. He's like, "We're going to fly you to Texas." And I'm like, "Fine, send me to Texas, And then the next day, he brought in a psychiatrist. And because when he was talking with me, he was asking me why I was in Africa. And I said, "Well, God called me to go." He said, "God called you." I didn't know this guy was an atheist, didn't believe in God. And so then he's like, "How did God call you?" I said, "Well, God talks to me." He says, "God talks to you." I said, "Yes." He says, "Do you talk back?" And I said, "Yes, I talk back to God. I talk to God, and he talks to me." He goes, "Oh, your problem's more serious than the leg." He volunteers. He says, "I will pay personally for you to consult. We have the best psychiatrists in the world. You need help." I said, "No, I don't want your psychiatrist." And so he ships me to Texas. And when I get to Texas, and the doctors there, of course, redo all the scans and everything. And they come in and they said, "Brent, bad news. We have good news and bad news. Bad news is medically your leg can't be repaired." And then they showed me, they said, we're gonna operate though, and we're gonna put in a titanium plate from your hip to your knee, and we're gonna pin the parts of your bone where they're supposed to be, but it's in multiple pieces. We're gonna pin the pieces where they're supposed to be. But he said, there's parts of your leg that stayed in the desert. And he said, that void that's there, it's not going to heal up. But he said, the good news is we found your kneecap. I'm like, "Oh, that's good." He said, and when the bullet went through and it scored the bottom, he said, it knocked your kneecap down to the back side of the bone. He said, it's been in tissue there, and it's still good. So he said, we've got a kneecap. I said, well, praise the Lord for a kneecap. And so he said, I'm a believer like you are. And he said, you shouldn't even be alive. So he said, I'm going to do this operation. We're going to put a brace on this leg. And he said, we're going to pray for 3 months. He said, if God does a miracle and causes bone to grow where it doesn't normally grow, he said, you'll keep the leg. He said, otherwise, we'll have to amputate. And he said, and it'll have to be, you'll lose more bone because of this fixator. So for 3 months, we waited, and everyone was praying. I mean, thousands of people were praying. The Assemblies of God prayer net had sent it all over the world. And after 3 months, I go in, and the doctor does the x-rays, and he comes to me and he says, I don't know who's praying for you, but tell them to stop. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I have never seen bone production like this in my life. And he said, now he says, we're going to have to operate to get you flexion. And he said, we got plenty to work with. He said, we got all this bone to work with. And so the Lord healed the leg. I did 8 months of rehab. But as I'm going through this, the opportunities to witness just keep opening. People that I would have never been in contact with, people that I've never been associated with, I'm able to share what God has done. And after 8 months of rehab, we returned with our family to Niger, Africa. And there were villages along the Niger River, because I was trying to evangelize from the capital city to the Mali border all along the Niger River. Well, there was a big territory that I had to skip over because the ethnic group that was there, and the people that shot me were from that same ethnic group. But that ethnic group that was there, the chiefs of those villages would not allow us to do any preaching, evangelism, or anything. When I go back, I went back to see them again, and they're like, you died last year. I'm like, no, I didn't. And God has given me a message for you. Every one of those villages, I was able to announce who Jesus is and how faithful he is. And at that point, I'm like, at first my questions were, God, why did you permit this to happen? Now all of a sudden I'm saying, thank you, Lord, for the scars that you've put here and for the miracles that you've done, because it's opening the doors for people to get saved. I've been back in Niger for a while. I had a team from the United States that was out. Been a Muslim country, we did a lot of community stuff. And so we were painting a public school. And we went early in the morning, because by 10:30 it's so hot. And we're painting this school, and we just gotten started when a car pulls up. There's a general with a driver, and he comes looking for me, and he says, the President of the Republic has summoned you to his office. I'm like, okay. He says, you have to come with me right now. Well, now I've got not good clothes on. Shelly's made sure that I wear my worst clothes, because she knows I'm going to get paint on them. In fact, I had a hole under this arm of my polo, and I'm dirty, and I got paint on me, and I'm like, my house is on the way to the president's office. So I tell the general when I get in the car with him, let's just do a quick stop. I said, I only need 2 minutes. I'll change clothes real quick. He's like, no, we're not stopping. I'm like, have you looked at me? He's like, I don't care what you look like. I said, no, I can't meet the president like this. He says, my orders are to bring you as is. He said, I don't care if you were in your underwear. I'm taking you to the president's office. And so I realized there's nothing I can do, so I'm stuck. We get to the president's office, and there in the waiting room, white leather furniture. I'm sitting on the edge, hoping I'm not transferring paint. I'm all uncomfortable. And then this European Union delegation comes in their suits and all this stuff, and they're looking at me like I'm the scum of the earth, who is this vagabond that's here, Now I'm just really embarrassed. And then the protocol officer comes out, and they take me ahead of the European Union. And I go in, I don't even know why I'm there. And here's President Tanja. He's 6'2". He's in this big white robe with this red fez hat on. And as I walk in and everything, and he greets me and has me sit down. And he says to me, surprises me, he says, Pastor, I noticed you weren't limping when you came in. I had no idea that it was his surgery team that had operated on me. I had no idea that while I was in France and while I was in Texas and all the places that I was the government of Niger was calling those hospitals and following my progress. And so now he tells me, he says, you probably noticed this delegation out here. He said, they say they want to help my country. But he said, for me to receive their help, and we need their help, I will have to decide what percentage of the sovereignty of this nation I'm willing to concede. So he said, we were really surprised that you came back after being shot. So he said, I've been following your ministry since you've been back. And he said, I knew you were painting a school over here today. So he said, I sent my general to get you. And he said, you're an object lesson for me today. He said, I'm going to receive these Europeans. And he said, I'm going to explain to them that there are some people that come and help our country and ask for nothing in return. They do it because of the love of Jesus. You see, what we do matters. And the things that we go through are for a reason, whether we realize it or not. And the bottom line is what the Lord said to me, He's saying to you again today. If you're alive and you're breathing and you're here, your mission is not over.
Thanks again for watching the service today. I hope it was an encouragement to you. We'd love to hear from you, so if you'd like to leave a note in the comments and let us know what you thought about the message, we'd love that. And if you're ever in the Springfield, Missouri area on a Sunday morning, we'd love to have you join us for church. You can attend our 8 a.m. classic service, or you can join us for church at 9:30 or 11.